Hey everyone, I'm Katie McGregor Bennett, your host of AV Trade Talk. We have a very special episode today. This is another in the series of Mastering Connectivity, brought to you by Chords. I've got three great guests again today, starting with James Chen, Rich Green, Chris Hogg. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'll let you guys each do an intro if you would, starting with Rich.
Hi there, my name is Rich Green. I am a system integrator, both residential and commercial. I work both in Silicon Valley, Palo Alto area, and in Wisconsin. And I've been in this business since 1978, and I've been volunteering for CEDIA since 1996. And I track new technologies as a hobby and as a passion.
Hi there, I'm Chris Hogg. I've only been an integrator since 1998. However, I'm an integrator turned manufacturer and now work for Samsung. And I'm heading up their SmartThings Pro division from a displays perspective within Europe. Whatever I'm going to talk about today is my opinion. I am just a techno nerd, like to dive deep into all of this stuff. So this is what I think. This is not a Samsung thing.
Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast. My name is James Chen. I'm the Managing Director of Chords, and we've been making cabling products such as speaker wire, HDMI cables, all the things that you guys are curious and ask a lot of questions about, and we've been around for 23 years. So we're here to talk about something that I think is very exciting, and I am very honoured to have both Rich and Chris with us today. I've learnt a lot from both of these people, and I'm very keen for you guys to hear from them about what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for taking time out of your day, gentlemen, to not only record this episode, but to expose the audience, if you will, to the inner workings of your minds. And I say that sort of jokingly, but the reason that we have gathered you here today is because of the extent of the research that you have put into not only for the current state of audiovisual, but where the future is taking us. And what does that look like? What does it feel like? How do we wrangle it? How do we deploy it? How do we leverage it? All of the things. So thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to make this conversation possible. For those of you who are listening in today, sit back, relax. You might want to grab a pen and paper or something to take notes, because you're about to hear a lot of forward-looking conversation and insights that are based on history as well as the broadly and quickly evolving state of audiovisual. This episode is going to be talking about how AV is entering a new age. As we know, there are tons of new technologies that we should all be aware of, and not a lot of awareness on how yet to integrate them both securely and effectively. We're going to kind of tip into that a little bit, and the conversation will unfold from there. Believe it or not, we actually have 4 distinct segments. I suspect by the time we get to the end of this, there will be 8 or more. That's just my guess, but we'll see how this goes. We're going to start section 1, segment 1, if you will, chapter 1, new technology overview. And this is really for all 3 of you, Chris, Rich, and James. Dive in here. Some of the things I'd like you to talk about is what are some of the new technologies coming into our lives in the next 10 years, and what should the integration community be aware of? Where are the opportunities? What are some of the potential pitfalls? Those kinds of things. How do we stay on top of it as a community? Those are all individual questions, but I throw them at you all at once. Discuss. So James, I'll let you tip off.
I was going to let Rich tip off because he's got so much to talk about. But okay,
all right,
okay.
Rich, Rich, we'll let you tip off.
Well, the next 10 years are going to be absolutely nothing like the past 10 years, and that's because of the accelerating pace of technology improvement. And that accelerating pace, which is exponential, is not something that humans are really good at understanding because we're linear thinking people. And so a lot of technologies sweep up over us, they surprise us, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? Well, it's been coming, and it will continue to come, and we need to think exponentially, not in a linear fashion. So very quickly, here's what's about to hit us over the next 10 years. We're already approaching a period of continuous connection where we are continuously connected with not only our homes, our devices, our work, our car, our third places, with the people we love and care about. That'll be a continuous connection. It's not something where you have to pick up your phone and initiate a call. It'll be continuous. We'll have audio-video immersion. People crave immersion. And if it's not done in traditional methods with giant screens and wraparound video in a room, it'll be done on your head with wraparound augmented reality and virtual reality headsets. We're already deep into that space. What's coming in right now are robots. Robots are getting trillions of dollars of investment, and it is a huge industry. Still a head scratcher, like, do we really need robots that serve trays of martinis in our homes?
Yes.
Once we get,
We say yes.
and there will be pervasive. We're
We're gonna need
be
it.
the ones to do this.
Laundry too, please.
Yeah, and then it gets kind of wacky. We get into brain-computer interfaces because the interface like this podcast is not sufficient. We should be able to just communicate with each other through our thinking.
Do you think that's a reality?
And so there's lots of
Rich, do
research.
you think that's a reality for within the next 10 years, in the next decade?
Absolutely. Within the next 10 years, they're already operating computers wirelessly from brain-computer interfaces. The issue has been non-invasive transceivers getting close enough into the neocortex to have high-resolution pickup of signals. And they're doing that right now. It's in a clinical environment, but they're doing it right now. So yes, it will come, because this interface, this stupid laptop that I'm talking on, is not going to carry us forward. It's not good enough. It's not fast enough. It's not immersive enough.
So what kind of things are they controlling now? What have you seen in the marketplace?
They're inserting, it's very similar to, let's say, stroke repair. If you have a stroke in your brain, they send a catheter through a large artery in your thigh, goes past the heart, through the neck, into the brain, and they can, through robotics, pinpoint the location of the stroke and repair it. So that very same technology with pinpoint placement of transceivers in the arteries and capillaries of the brain is something they can do right now using stroke repair technology, if you will, catheters. So once we get these transceivers planted safely inside the brain, then we can start broadcasting out and into the brain. And so that's happening clinically right now.
Oh. So would that be could that be used to control devices, talk to each other, communicate with each other? Well, if you can talk to each other, there's no need for typing, right? So what type of experiences is that going to give us?
Everything that we're experiencing right now in this call can be handled with a brain-computer interface with much higher resolution, and the benefit of tapping into a 1,000,000-fold increase in our intelligence, because we can Google on the brain and you can AI on the brain. So your ChatGPT, who becomes your most powerful ally, or pick your AI or number of AIs. We will amplify our intelligence to such a degree that the traditional interfaces like a laptop won't be able to keep up with what's going on in our head. And that creates a need for what I call mental athletes. So when you start putting brain-computer interfaces into the brain and you can start amplifying your intelligence 1,000,000-fold, where we're going to need certain people whose brains don't explode. They don't become schizophrenic. They don't become psychotic. They run with it. And it's very similar to the old days of LSD and mescaline and mushrooms. Some brains handled it really well, and it was a huge amplification of the human potential. And others couldn't handle it because the brains weren't prepared for that. So we're going to see the same kind of mental athletes being groomed to accept the brain-computer interface and run with it, along with the 1,000,000-fold amplification in our access to intelligence. And what's going to create kind of an open territory for that is this rapid advance in AI. We're already at artificial general intelligence. Sam Altman said in a recent blog that ChatGPT is already more powerful than any human who has ever lived. So what we need to do is tap into that in an intimate way, and that's where these new interfaces come into play. We're also going to have phenomenal advances very quickly in quantum computing, and then we end up with artificial superintelligence, which is an intelligence that's way beyond any individual person. And in fact, it'll be beyond the intelligence of all humans combined. So that is probably within 10 years. And wow, what does that do to us? Who's going to be prepared to run with this? Who's going to run away and hide? Hard to tell right now. People are pretty screwed up. People are biased as hell. We are biased for survival, and those biases get in the way of our ability to get clarity about what's going on around us. So we have a huge task ahead of us with all of these technologies that are pounding toward us, whether we like it or not.
How do we switch off? How do we escape? How do we gather opinion? How do we make a choice? Because if we're constantly zapped,
well, I think the other part of
that is so important, James. It's what I call real reality, and there's going to be a backlash against some of this. So people are going to fall back into small communities, families, fireside chats, campfires, go to the local pub, fall back on your community church and social organizations. We're going to see that get amplified as well.
I think, what I was going to say was, all of this stuff, it's allowing us to achieve more. All of for whatever it is, AI or whatever, has to be there to allow us to be better and more effective as humans. And I think we stand a risk of chasing the rabbit of technological advance, more speed, more connectivity, everything else, but forget that actually we live in a tactile world. We crave connection. We crave being around people. So the challenge for me with all of this is actually not how do we implement it, but how do we implement it within the social networks that we actually have to have as human beings to survive properly. Because otherwise, we are literally going to be living in the Matrix.
Yeah, but even living in the Matrix, there was there was a sense of normality. It wasn't a it's exciting what I'm hearing, but it's scary as shit too, because there's the possibility of losing control. There has to be a switch somehow. I'm a little bit more reserved about the future. It's not that I don't believe that could be a possibility, but I think in terms of a practicality around that there seems to be a lack of legislation. There seems to be a whole lot of lack of control. Is money the thing that's buying all these things and forcing it through the gaps and making it and inflicting it upon us? And that's we can go in many ways around that. I before this conversation, I thought it was going to be the next 10 years was going to be a lot simpler. I thought, technology was going to, some of our other podcasts that a lot of people have heard, the technology is going to go outdoors. We're going to be figuring out Wi-Fi so that we can stay connected correctly, so that these brain interfaces could work more reliably. We were going to see more cabling, the experience of screens. Chris, you might be able to share a little bit more about that without revealing too many secrets, but we were going to get even more deeper in terms of colors and resolution, so that it feels like at the moment we're walking up to a screen and going, oh yeah, we're still seeing the pixels, but getting close to that holodeck type experience where you walk close to the screen and it's like, wow, I feel I can touch the tree. That was where I was at for the next 10 years. But Rich, you're telling us, hey, there is no tree. Which is like a...
It's not exactly what I'm saying. There is a tree, and the fact of the matter is, people care very much about each other. We're hardwired to care about other people, what they think, what they do. We don't care very much about machines. So technology that supports the human condition, the human need, that's what we need, and that's what will keep us going. Yeah, we could easily be replaced, and intelligence will live on. There's nothing magic about intelligence. It's fundamental to the universe. It doesn't have to be biological. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's not artificial. It's real intelligence, just like our intelligence is real. And it will continue to expand in its capacity beyond what our puny little brains can do inside our heads. So we have to come to grips with that. It will happen whether we like it or not. However, those AIs can't reach out and grab a tree and feel it the way that we do. So when we go into these giant screens that are 8K and beyond and super high definition, high dynamic range, and fabulous colors, can they excite the visual cortex in such a way that we think we're experiencing a real person at the other side? Probably not, because we're pretty sophisticated. We know about how to see right through the nasty illusion of video. So that's going to be a real good, interesting space to watch, and I'd love to hear what Chris has to say about that.
I think it's. I think there's a phrase I use when I'm doing some of my presentations around AI and what we're doing at Samsung. And there are two types of tools out there. There's the external tools that everyone's using, ChatGPT, etc. And then there's the internal tools that manufacturers have that are allowing them to develop their own AI products. But what I've not found yet is an AI product that can make me a cup of tea. And by that, what I mean is, there are AI is going to drive a lot of stuff, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, whether it's AI or it's good machine learning or it's a good algorithm or whatever we want to call it, there's always going to be need for a tactile human interaction at some point in time, somewhere. And I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future. And I think you're right. You mentioned the point about people unplugging and going back to, getting out of the web, if you want. That's definitely going to happen. We're already starting to see it happen. There was a whole article on the news in the UK where Prince William was talking about his children not having phones, and when they do, he'll just give them an old brick like an old Nokia, because he doesn't want them accessing the web. He doesn't want them having access to all of this information. And I think there's definitely a backlash coming against it. And I think the other piece to go back to is what James was saying, all of the stuff that's coming, this crazy exponential growth in power and speed and intelligence, and the way it's scraping data, it's impressive. It's mind-blowing. But underneath, there's still a steady plod of technological product coming through, new product development. Nobody's going to change the fact that we are going to sit and watch televisions for the next few years. That market will still be there. There may come a time when we do just put a cap on and all of a sudden we just see it. But I'm not sure we will, because again, quite often a film or watching a TV show, that's a shared experience. That's stuff you do with the family. That's almost an unplugged event again. It's an analog thing to do in some respects. So I think we will see this twofold thing. The speed coming and the whole thing coming forward. I was playing with a brain interface Scalextric set about 4 months ago that worked brilliantly. So we know we can do this level of control. But I'm also looking at what we're doing in terms of the future development of screens and stuff. Not much is going to change. Yes, James is right. You're going to get better resolutions, better colors, better depth. There will become more holographic style displays coming through. But I think that we will always, whatever we do, it will always come down to the experience about how does it make us feel? How do we actually interact with it? And all of this stuff, whether it's brain interfaces or hypercomputing or whatever else it is, it needs to be harnessed to actually just make us better human beings, or perform better, or be better than we are. and that's the piece that I always see, that it's got to have the human element to it. I love the bit you said though, Rich, about, artificial intelligence isn't artificial intelligence. Actually, it's real intelligence. It's just a different format to what human intelligence is. And intelligence is fundamental across the universe. And I thought that was a brilliant thought process. But I just think we've got almost two tracks here. There's this sort of the higher track of, these are the things that are going to come. These are what's going to affect us. This is what's going to start impacting us. But then there will be this sluggish response from sort of the mass market to catch up into this space. And you and I will always play in that cutting edge, that bleeding edge of it, because that's where we love to be. And those are the bits that challenge us. But I just think, we chase technological advance without understanding the reason why we're actually doing it. And I think sometimes that's not always the best thing to do.
There's a dark side that you're touching on, Chris, and the dark side is the consumer economy. We are compelled to watch TV because it's an advertising medium. We're compelled to listen to our speakers because it's an advertising medium. We're compelled to load that new fancy AI app on our laptop because it's an advertising medium. And so that commercial back end to so much of what new technology is driven by is, I think, open for a significant backlash. What I would like to see happen, and what I'd like to hear more from both you, Chris, and James, is what do these technologies and the human craving for more human experiences, how do those impact the world of architecture, which is really our world? We work within architecturally designed spaces, homes, commercial spaces. Those are going to change. I'm talking to a very sophisticated architect right now in Palo Alto, Terry Beaubois, and he's all about creating intelligent, connected, always-on, immersive, fabulously intelligent spaces that entirely support the human condition. He worked with Doug Engelbart back in the 1950s and 60s, and it was Doug Engelbart who invented the computer mouse, by the way, but it was Doug Engelbart who really championed the idea of intelligence augmentation. Like, how can the machine, how can the architect make us better humans? So what I think when we talk about the future of technology, a lot of it, the boring stuff, is the future of mobility. What I think is really interesting is the future of technology integration with the home. How does it recede into the background? How does it become invisible? How is it just there to support us? How does the home become a guardian angel that's always looking out for us, that's always whispering in our ear, hey, you should take an umbrella, it's going to rain today, that kind of thing. And how do we support, in our industries, how do we support a new kind of architecture that's more humane while embracing all of these fabulous technologies, so that they're not isolating people, that they're bringing people together?
The opposite of Monster House. I kind of disagree with you a little bit, Rich, when you said people are not going to care so much about these devices or something to that flavor. I think there's enough research that people can be made to care. We see so many generations, Aibo, the pet, the electronic pet dog, even the one of our members, Sawan, walks around a show with a robot canine, and everyone is curious. But the other thing is also people are concerned about robotic invasiveness in our spaces. And when you talk about architecture, if I'm the first image that goes into my head is like, well, if I'm in an elevator and a robot also needs to get in the elevator to go to a certain floor, how do I feel about that? So there is a feeling, and if there's rejection, then there's naturally the opposite side of that, the care of that, and we can see that with people who care about their phone, or we've got people who are passionate about cars, and they love their car more than their wife, right? That type of thing. It's an inanimate thing. It's a machine, but there's that experience. So I think there needs to be a little bit more research into that, and I think that could affect the type of technology that's developed in terms of the architecture, in terms of how people experience this type of technology or electronic servants. I think there will be other access ways and corridors, just like on a luxury yacht, right? The owner has his own grand staircase, and the people who service the yacht don't use the grand staircase. They have access hatches and access ways and other methods, and so those robots or devices could be designed like they might have a special flat elevator that's made inside every single stairwell, and the robot just hooks itself to it, shoots up to the 17th floor, comes out the access door or under the access door, and does its thing. So I think there's a lot of expansion. There's a lot of robotics. We've seen a lot of this kind of thing where the articulation is very different to how we're built, and how we're built could be considered a limiting factor in terms of the flexibility and the things that we operate from, how they communicate. Getting back to the communication thing, I think there's a level of security and of that we need to be aware of when we're looking at things like autonomy and programming and duration of disconnection from the grid, not necessarily power, but communication, because those devices, one, they have to be secure and not be hijacked. Two, we're most likely to be using those devices for health and awareness monitoring, where you're going to need these devices to be aware to help you. If someone falls over, they're going to be able to know when to help and when not to help someone to get up, as in addition to getting you a cup of tea.
That's a lot to chew on there, James. When it comes to people loving their machines, for the most part, they love their machines because they were persuaded to do so. That's persuasive technology. It's advertising. It's marketing. So why do we love Ferraris? Why do we love Leica cameras? Why do we love smoking cigarettes? It's because we're persuaded to do it. Even though it can kill us, we're persuaded to love cigarettes. And so we have to be very careful about falling into the trap of persuasion, because that's what fuels the consumer economy. We want to buy cool things. We want to buy luxury things. Why? Well, in and of themselves, they're not that great, but we're persuaded that they are. So I think let's stay eyes wide open about the future of persuasion and how intimate that is about to become because of the highly customizable effects of personalized AI. Our defenses have to be full on against what these people are doing to us. I just downloaded a AI note-taking app called Notion, and it was recommended to me by a friend. And what did they do? They quickly inserted themselves all over my computer. They got into the startup folder, and so now it launches every time I start my computer. How dare they do that? And they did it without permission. This is what I'm talking about. This stuff gets inserted into our lives, and then we start saying things like, oh, I really like this app. I don't think I could live without it. That's because you were persuaded to think that way. So I'm saying let's hear it for the human being, and we can defend ourselves against these forms of persuasion. On the other hand, these things are incredibly helpful. When it comes to the robot, why don't you just put a robot on each floor? And for that matter, just put a robot in each room. Then it doesn't need a hallway or an elevator.
May I take a quotation from a future Stardate, from a very real character, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, where he tells us that resistance is futile.
I don't think it is. We can still fight back, but some of us can. Others can't. They love to be persuaded.
This is fascinating conversation. I'm gonna rein you guys in though a little bit, partially because I fear that you might be scaring the children. And I jokingly say that. But fascinating, just in terms of current state of AI, but also the rapidly evolving state of AI. And I want to just touch on, and then we'll shift that last point you made about the desperate need for all of us as individuals to be vigilant, that AI adoption and the implementation automatically in ways that we may not even recognize or realize. I had an eye-opening one. Gemini automatically opted us all in to it being able to read our email, digest it, and use it to train models. I've got a serious issue with that as an agency who's under NDA, and I suspect that each one of you and many of you listening, we can't just automatically let these platforms auto-update to include AI that is overseeing everything you're doing to make your life more convenient. If there's a legality to the work that you do, and very few do not, this is an issue. We've got to start being more vigilant now. And this conversation today is a really strong tipping point. We're going to shift now into the integration side of things. Each of you come from integration, are actively involved with the art and skill of integration now. Let's talk a little bit about the application of this evolution of technology. As we see it now, let's talk a little bit about opportunities for the integration community at large based on what's happening and is already in place out there. And then, Rich, if you would, take us down the path a little bit of, what should we be thinking of as a community for that next round of adoption, and what do we need to be thinking about?
Well, we're going to have robots inside our homes, but with the new architecture to support the human condition I was talking about, the robot is the home. The home becomes a robot. So what does it need? Well, it needs sensors, it needs actuators, it needs agents. So as integrators, we're going to be managing the installation of far more sensing devices than we've even been used to in the past. So many more cameras, many more microphones, many more heat, temperature, carbon monoxide, natural gas sensors, pressure sensors in floors, underneath the carpets, outdoor surveillance, indoor surveillance, weather, etc. So if the home is really going to support the family's human needs, well, it needs to be more of a cyborg. It needs to be out there with tons of sensors. So as integrators, we've got a huge challenge coming up. And this is more Chris's space. How do these sensors transmit their data? And to whom and under what circumstances? So not only do we have an integration opportunity, we got a cybersecurity threat like we've never seen before. And we're the integrators that put this stuff into people's homes. That means we're on the hook to keep it safe and to keep families safe. So I'm both excited about it and I'm terrified about it. But I know that in Chris's world, with Samsung SmartThings, et cetera, the whole IoT universe, that will be expanding exponentially, and we're going to be the ones to integrate it into the smart home. We just got to have our eyes open about who is protected, where's the firewall, who sets the guardrails, what happens when there's an unauthorized firmware update that smashes everything apart. So that's the new challenge for integration.
Yeah, and I'll pick up straight off the back of that. It's interesting. I think you can't just talk about the home. And we got to bear in mind that our integrators aren't just integrating homes, they're also integrating commercial spaces. We're already putting robots into offices to deliver samples, to deliver food, what have you. It's quite an interesting space. But you're right, we are in, to coin the phrase of a friend of ours, in an age of mass sensorization. We within SmartThings Pro, we've got sensors that will do just about everything from LiDAR all the way through. They're already integrated. They're already working. We're using them in commercial spaces. We're using them in residential spaces. We're using them in sort of buy-to-let spaces. And we're using them for things like gait recognition. So we know when somebody's not particularly feeling well or whatever else. There's so much stuff going on. And this all is about one thing. It's about data. And the data is not a member of Mr. Picard's crew. This is the stuff that is coming from all of these sensors, and it's what we do with them that counts. How do we take that and put it through a good algorithm to make it actually do at its core fundamental, and if this then that kind of protocol. And you're dead right. The biggest gap in any security has always been in recent years, and probably always will be, is through these IoT devices. We know that most of the hacks that seem to go in through things like CCTV cameras because they were never secured properly. So our integrators are going to have to get really wise to this. They've got to start thinking about all of these cloud services. SmartThings Pro is a cloud service. How do we protect those properly? How do we build those robust networks? But also, how do we make sure that the cloud that we're actually reporting or using is secure? When we get into a commercial space, if we're doing a SmartThings Pro rollout into a bank, well, the first thing I'm going to see is we're going to be penetrating testing that bank, that system, almost every 2 weeks, just to make sure we stay on top of it. And okay, we've got products within the portfolio that will do the whole security piece and a layer at the device level, but we're still putting together loads of little sensors and loads of devices from multiple companies and multiple manufacturers, and they're going to communicate through so many different ways. I'm a firm believer in the only secure way of getting a signal from A to B is down a piece of wire. But wireless is coming. We're working with companies doing wireless power for battery charging on sensors, etc. The integrator of the future is going to be doing much more integration of substrate systems than ever before, and more importantly, they're going to be doing it for a multitude of reasons. We've not even touched on aging in place yet. That's a huge market, which I know we're all interested in. But it's where we see this IoT thing going is when you get into a commercial space, you're going to have a commercial grade of sensor and a commercial grade of connectivity. So you'll be looking something along the lines of KNX, which you'll see mainly in Europe, or those proprietary bus systems that you get from the larger manufacturers, and then other devices that will sit on there as ad hoc. When you get into residential spaces, that's when you're going to start to see a lot of Zigbee, Z-Wave type devices that all need a battery. But can you imagine in a commercial building, you've got 2,500 sensors and they all need a battery changing? You can have a job just for one person every year just to change batteries. So that's where you're going to start to have to sort of disseminate where do you go from? And I think the phrase we've always used is, where do we go from what was a DIY IoT consumer product that you will buy from well-known online retailers to a do-it-for-me, a DIFM product that an integrator is going to install and support? And the challenge is actually more about the support than it is about the install. And I think that's the bit our integrators have always struggled with, is how do we get the support? And that support piece is where that's going to drive it further forwards. But I see this move in the market now, where people want stuff to be plug and play, easy to install, but commercial, security led, great products that they can program and they can make things happen around. And I think the other part is they're going to have to start thinking about, what does that mean in terms of security and all the other stuff. We've probably gone more into the future of work for the integrators piece than the standards bit, but that's sort of where I see it coming. Can Kate, if you want to take this back into the standards piece, so the challenge around the standards is going to be there are a number of standards there within building control. So I mentioned KNX earlier on. That's a good stable one, and it's multi-platform, it's multi-manufacturer. We've then got obviously Zigbee, Z-Wave, and all the wireless bus there. One of the things I'm starting to see now is a really large uptake around private 5G networks, where larger campuses, larger sites are actually starting to put 5G networks in place, buying a spectrum of that, and then issuing out eSIMs into their students or into their employees, or actually even into the community. So you've got your own community that's built around the 5G connectivity to your mobile device, but also your home control devices or your building control devices are sitting on that private 5G network. So now all of a sudden the wire's not happening. We've got that 5G connectivity. Now I don't think that'll completely happen. I think what will end up is 5G into into a hub, and then you'll have the network that's spinning around the hub in those localized spaces. But that piece of connectivity is going to come. And I know that when you look at the larger manufacturers and the larger telcos, they're already starting to push this. Because what I didn't realize until the other day is that you can have up to 13 eSIMs on your phone. You're not just limited to 1 or 2 SIMs anymore. So that changes the way we think. And then there are other things coming. Fault managed power. Fault managed power is going to really change the game here. And I think to a certain extent, you've got the new Chinese the GPMI platform that's coming. I'm interested to see what happens with that. I'm not convinced it'll spread outside of Asia, but we'll see, because it has legs. But I think when you look at those two technologies, the way that we're looking at driving higher voltages and higher power over PoE effectively is going to change the way we wire buildings, wire devices together, how that communications protocol will change. And I think those two technologies are going to be ones that really start to push the infrastructure conversation. And I think the other thing we're seeing really heavily here in Samsung is, I said I was going to talk about my stuff, but I'll tell you what we're doing as well. But what we're seeing is a mass move over into AV over IP. That's coming from our partners. We're seeing a lot of the new technology coming forwards, and I will put money down that you will see from some of the manufacturers around, certainly around the meeting room space, etc. Next year at ISC, we'll be launching AVIO over IP devices. This stuff is coming, and it's coming quick. And I think those for me, in terms of infrastructure, those are the 3 things that are going to drive it, or 4 things. You've got the change in the way we're going to connect wirelessly. You've got higher power coming over Ethernet. And then you've got AV
when do you see?
Which is going to start.
And this is a question both for Chris and Rich.
And that's where people are going to have to start thinking about.
We're getting a lot of crossover from different industries joining into one industry. And outside of this, when we talk about compliance and regulation, there's a big piece in terms of like, where do electricians sit? And, the expansion of that versus the integrator. What is it that the integrator can provide? And what can you see in the next 10 years where in some US states, there's now conversation where integrators are being legislated out?
So I'll pick that up first, Rich, if you don't mind. So you're right, and I know that at a senior level years ago we were fighting this, probably in the States. It'll vary around the world in terms of that sort of pressure. But a cable's a cable, and a cable can be run by almost anybody. It's what you do at either ends of it. And the reason electricians are well legislated again, in terms of the qualifications they need, etc., to be able to run a high power cable. You can kill people with 230 volts if you're not careful. But fault managed power doesn't have those sort of risks associated to them. So that could be run by a networking guy who doesn't need to be, and in the UK we call it Part L qualifications. That doesn't need to be run with those sort of pieces. What will drive that conversation and drive this friction will be the unions, people wanting to try and protect standard, protect industries and people within those industries. But what I see is we're now starting to see the traditional electricians starting to skill up. They're starting to understand that they need to understand the smart home product and what they're going to do in people's homes. And I think Germany for me is one of the best examples out there. Germany is the only place I've ever seen where KNX is taught at university to electricians. So these electricians are coming out already with home automation skills out of the back of the university as part of their electrical courses. And I think that's what we'll start to see. I've seen in the commercial space as well. Traditionally, there were two types of engineer. There was the AV engineer and there was the IT engineer. And they wouldn't really talk to each other. The IT guys were going, "Oh, you're not having my network. You're not going to put your stuff on my network. I can't secure it." Now, what I'm seeing in the commercial space is these big corporates now have AV IT engineers on site. There's a merge between the AV and the IT space. Consumer's been a little bit more different because it's always really been the integrator that's done both. And that's what I think puts the consumer space in a little bit ahead in terms of the sort of maturity there. But the commercial guys are catching up quick. I think we're going to see a state where eventually electricians will be doing smart home deployments. And what I would be saying to an integrator of today is you need to start looking at how do you put in electrical services within your portfolio and own that space as much as owning everything else.
Well, I think that the most qualified
below.
person is the person who should do the work. And so as a homeowner, a building owner, or building manager, you want to choose certified, qualified professionals to do the work. Whether they come from an electrical contracting background or a low voltage background shouldn't matter as long as they can do the work well and safely. I love where Chris is going, though, that it's the low voltage, or in some jurisdictions called non-lethal cable, non-lethal voltages. When those start to get to the point where you can accomplish just about most of what you need to do in the home with category cable, then we have a different kind of a world. And so that opens up opportunities for traditional system integrators. But I don't think that the electrical contracting community is going to look away from this. Of course, they're going to embrace it. And let's embrace them and say, okay, if you're qualified to do that, I'll be the one to manage the design and the engineering and the project management and the integration and so on. Do I really need to be pulling wire through a construction site? If they can do it really well and perhaps less expensively than I can, I'm okay with that. In fact, that's my model. It works very well for me. I'm not slogging around construction sites pulling wire. I don't want to. But you got to watch them like a hawk, because one misstep and you're screwed. So you have to have eyes on the scene all the time, but you don't need to be the one on the ladder. So I'm okay with that. Now, that begs the question, how do they get educated? How do they get certified? And Chris, you point out that it's already happening in Germany at the training level. We need to be thinking along those terms too. Now, CEDIA has a tremendous learning and training facility behind it. It's about to expand, by the way. We're about to get some really interesting content out there and certification programs and so on that are completely aligned with each other. I'm very excited about what we're doing with CEDIA. And we hope to bring in the electrical contracting community. Sure, come on, join us and figure it out. That's a good place for you to be. The infrastructure is important, of course. We've got to run wires where it's absolutely essential to be completely secure and reliable. But the future of connectivity in the home is much more than a wired backbone. It is a wired backbone that connects to more advanced Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 8, and cellular data networks, G5, those are all going to be blended together. We're going to have a hardwired, totally secure, reliable infrastructure that also supports a very secure Wi-Fi and cellular data network. And what makes that happen, that's what Wi-Fi 7 and more to the point Wi-Fi 8 are all about, is they're putting AI behind it. They're putting intelligence into the network so that the network is extremely agile. It can flip instantaneously between 5G, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Z-Wave, Matter. It knows the right frequency, the right bandwidth, the right latency characteristics to address the device that's being requested. So we're right on the verge of that. We're about to have really, really smart networks. And those really, really smart networks will fail if they don't have a rock-solid hardwired backbone.
Mm-hmm. James, I'm going to pull you in here because I think that's a perfect opportunity for you to talk a little bit about how Chords is addressing this, not only from current capabilities, future capabilities, from an integrator's POV. Pick up from here and talk a little bit about how Chords is addressing this.
Yeah. So Chris mentioned GPMI. I question. I don't question its technology. I think it's a revision that is potentially required. I question political influence. I question international ownership. I question evenness and recognition in terms of the equality, the value of any of the adopters, and their ability to have equal representation when it comes to that platform. Those are the things that HDMI offers that very few platforms, including arguably DisplayPort USB-C, offer. So from that standpoint, I feel that there are massive challenges. In terms of implementation and in terms of advice, I guess, for integrators, I always say to implement what you know. Don't make your clients the experiment. There's a lot of new technologies coming. There's a lot of new technologies coming on existing platforms. And that is something to be aware of. Just because PoE is available does not mean that that infrastructure that's in the house is capable of PoE, is capable of AV over IP, is capable of being run for the high voltage power. You know, there's platform. I don't know what, like Chris, you know, when you were talking about that, is digital power the same thing? Yeah. So it's shunting massive amounts of power over a very, very short time frame. And, you know, I'm going to get a little bit geeky on you in terms of cable, and that can introduce massive slew rates and jitter and timing, and incredible amounts of magnetic influence on your Wi-Fi network. And our Wi-Fi network is very saturated. And if you start implementing these, 5G networks on top of that, and on top of that you've got wireless charging, and on top of that you've got high resolution streaming, and then you put digital power across even in a room, that potentially could work like an EMP. Of course it's not going to, but you know, we're never going to draw the amount of power to shut a silicon circuit down. But when you've got that huge amount of force, which also causes a lot of mechanical stress. It causes vibration and all of those things. Many of us have gone to installs before. We've picked up a cable in the ceiling. It's like, oh, that's a Cat cable, I can use it, and then only to find that it doesn't work. That is going to increase. We have standards, but we also have suppliers that we need to rely on. And if the supplier doesn't know whether it's going to support it or not, I would almost say don't use that supplier. Right? If the answer is either yes or no. If it's no, that's fine, because they still know that it doesn't support it. If it's yes, great, you don't need to rerun a cable. Right? But if it's I don't really know, let me get back to you, then that's kind of like, for me, that's kind of like a flag. That it's kind of like, well, is that supplier meant to be your supplier? Because you're getting into this area of confusion. Like the stuff that we've covered, like this can all happen within 10 years. It can, and there's a high probability of that. So reliability, my piece is predictable reliability, because I don't believe reliability, 100% reliability is possible in today's world. But we can predict a high level of success in anything that we implement. But you've also got to consider that those implementations is not a single implementation. It's implementation of thousands of processes into a single unique thing that operates like the human body. It's not possible for the human body to always completely 100% be well. There's always going to be some part that goes awry. And our houses are arguably going to be even more complex. So wide is the way as a base infrastructure. Wireless is the way for convenience. Yeah. I don't know whether that answers your question.
I completely agree with you. I think, I agree with you, James. Here, I think you wide is always going to be the way. We used to have an adage we used in Connected, which was my integration company, which was the most expensive cable that we ever put in was the one we forgot. But the challenge is now, with all this stuff coming, what wires do we put in? And our model was the same as Richard's, by the way. Get somebody else to run the cables. You don't need a skilled person to run a cable from A to B. You need somebody who can actually put a tag on the end and actually identify the cable properly. Because trust me, getting just a bunch of cables with nothing on it is a nightmare. But we're putting cables in. What should we be putting in? Where do we go? How do we future-proof the idea? And I don't like that phrase, future-proof, but it's how do we take the best guess? And I think that's the piece there. And not wanting to do your sales pitch for you, but you've got to trust a supplier that's prepared to say this will work, or this we know won't do that job, rather than it's here, it's cheap. We've got to move away from just buying on price. We've got to buy on specification. We've got to buy on performance, and we've got to buy on the fact that we know it's going to do the job and is likely to be what we need in the near future.
And I'll be designing some little broadcast studios for them. They like to do webinars and so on with the executives. Pretty cool. It's like a little TV studio inside the company. And one of the reasons they asked me to come in and take a look at it is because their video kept failing, and very often just before they went live on a webinar, the cameras would just fail. They wouldn't get signal. I went, well, that's unusual. What are you doing? You doing SDI? You doing HDMI? Well, we're using HDMI, and we bought some good cables on the internet. So I went and took a look at it, and it's like, sure enough, they were using 6K cameras driving a very inexpensive active HDMI cable of very low quality, and they were shutting down. It's like, can you guys afford a decent cable? Give me a break. This is mission critical for you. What are you thinking buying cheap cable off the internet? I don't get you. You want my help? We're going to have to do it the right way. We're going to do it with premium cables all the way through that are going to give you that assurance that you're going to get a signal through. So it's just, it's baffling. And who are these people? For the most part, they're IT people. And they just don't have respect for what we do at the level of high bitrate, high bandwidth HDMI transmissions. Like, they don't get it. They just think, oh, I'll plug it in. So that's where we come in.
I would also challenge.
We know this stuff.
I would also challenge the word cheap, because in today's connectivity, in terms of the Chords evaluation, expensive cables don't make them good either. There are many expensive cables out there that just don't work either. So, without proper engineering, without proper standards, without proper understanding of, if we're putting cables outdoors, that outdoor rating for longevity, even if we're putting them in walls, that certification of fire and safety, that third-party registration of performance, that repeated testing before it's employed is crucial and vital for success, because it's not even just a surround sound system. It's thousands of things going together, and you only need one of those things to fail, and you're going to get a call. And it doesn't matter if that other thing, that the second thing that fails is on a different system, you're still going to be blamed. And then the homeowner says, this system that you installed doesn't work, when you're trying to put all these things together that are unrelated, because it's still your system that you have deployed. So, yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of that price is what you pay, value is what you get statement. And I forget who said it originally. It's not the point, because I really think it shifts now to price is what you pay, performance is what you get. And when you put this conversation collectively and look at it through that lens, it really starts to put a very fine point on what we do in integration. Why custom install as a channel exists is ultimately to ensure optimum performance of the things that are running your home. To Rich, to your point, I mean, the home essentially is a computer now. So we as individuals have to look at how we live in our homes differently now. As service providers for technology, we have to look at how homes are being lived in differently, and really the specific needs of that home environment, which could be indoor or outdoor. And James, you touched a little bit on the ruggedization requirements for outdoor. One product, one cable, one thing does not fit all purposes. And if you've been listening to this series of podcasts over the course of the year, the Mastering Connectivity series, there is a great amount of conversation talking about the different ways of looking at the changing role of integration, the changing role of the products that serve integration, and how to be specifying in a different manner in order to feed the needs of the future, which today's conversation amplifies the fact that the future is already here today. And, as cliche as that is, it really is. And we as an industry, to ensure our longevity, we have to figure out a way to get a hold of this and get in front of it and continue to be the experts in the room to ensure that homes continue to perform to the needs of every occupant within the home, which is now going to be more and more multi-generational, different needs. Yeah. Rich, I know there was something you wanted to jump in on a moment ago. Dive in, if you would.
Well, no, just based on what you just said, I think there's a huge opportunity for the integrator channel, the CEDIA channel, if you will, to make it really clear to our customers, to our lifelong clients, that the systems that we design and install are in fact never complete. They're never finished. It is an ongoing beast. It is an animal, and they require a lot of care and feeding. They need updates. They need surveillance. They need security updates, firmware updates, software updates on a regular basis, so that when we sell that system, we don't call it final installation. It's really a milestone in a lifelong relationship that we have with that homeowner, with that family, and that property. So, yeah, we're going to come in and we're going to fix things that break, because a lot of consumer electronics do break. And we're going to fix that wire that might have failed, and we're going to update that software, and oops, it broke something else. Well, we're going to catch that too. So there's a charge for that. And the long-term profitability, the survivability of our companies, our integration companies, is going to be based on that long-term relationship with the client. And we have to make it very clear that when they write the final check, it's not the final check. It's just a check in a long relationship, and the next time you're going to see me is about 3 months from now. And then it's going to be about 3 months after that. And then it's going to be about 3 months after that. It could be even a shorter interval. And they should get used to us coming in, and they should be happy to pay us to be there, because we're keeping their environment alive. We're keeping their families safe. And that once they have a bad experience, they'll pay almost any price. I've got clients who just jump up and down in joy when I show up on a job. Oh boy, Rich Green is here. Yay! Because they feel like I'm paying attention, and I'm going to make sure things get done the right way for them for the rest of our lives. And I do. I feel that way. And when I take on a client, it's for life. So now we need to figure out how to monetize that.
So I'll bounce back with a counter view, Rich. So if I'm the homeowner and I'm going to say, right, here's what I want you to do for me. Here's my functionality spec. There's the check. It's done. It's working. Why do I need to upgrade the firmware and the software? Because my house is working the way I want it to. It meets the functionality spec. If I'm going to be looking at you going, every 3 months I'm going to have to cut him a check for coming back and doing this. Why do I want this technology stuff in my house? Can't I just go back to a normal light switch? So how do we balance that kind of conversation around, I want to put the tech in there, but actually I don't want it to be a never-ending journey. I want it to be a journey that here's the upfront cost, and okay, I'm happy to pay, a service. It's a bit like having your garden remodeled. The garden gets remodeled, and the guy's going to come back every couple of weeks to mow the lawn.
Let's move on a little bit.
It's how do we get over those conversations?
I have a question about.
I can see pushback for that.
What type of skills do you think integrators
it's a never-ending story, and you're always going to be paying me.
What do they need to get into? What are we know they need to install stuff. We know they need to maybe be more au fait with electrical, systems and partnership with electricians, or have electricians as part of their team. But what other skills do you think integrators need?
Well, the term integrator is extremely broad. You've got different categories of practitioners in that field. You have salespeople, marketing people, designers, engineers, and designers and engineers are very different types of capabilities. And then you've got technicians, you have software people, you have security people, and you have service and maintenance people. So integrators, an integration company can hire many different disciplines to get the job done. And a lot of new companies start with just one or two people, and they have to wear all those hats. That's really hard. So it takes continuous improvement, continuous education. At the very minimum, people need to know how to run a wire in a house, if that's the business they're in. They need to know how to operate a laptop computer. They need to know how to run the most helpful apps. They need to know how to call tech support and get through a tech support session through their laptop on site, even if the network isn't done yet. There's a lot of intricacies that integrators need to know. It's a really difficult discipline. This is not easy, and it takes continuous training, continuous improvement, and then we need to show that we are qualified to do the work. And that's where certification comes in. That's where industry recognition comes in. and it takes years to get there. So, the two guys, a dog, and a pickup truck, God bless them, if they want to get started in this industry, they're going to have to do their homework. And they're going to have to do their homework real fast. Otherwise, they're going to be eaten alive. So everyone in the company, if I used to have a very large company. Well, for me, it was a large company. I employed like 30 people. I had layers of project management, layers of design, layers of engineering, layers of technicians, and so on. Every single one of them was trained and certified, and they appreciated that, and they respected each other for it. So I don't know if that answers your question, James, but I think it's a beast, and we really need to take it seriously. It's not easy. Artificial intelligence is amplified intelligence. Yeah, it's an essential tool in the toolkit. If you don't know how, let's say, if you don't know why Wi-Fi 7 would be important to a client, well, just go ask AI, and it'll give you all the technical details and the reasons why it's important in certain applications and not in other applications. So use AI as an intelligence amplification, as a training amplifier. It's nonsense for an integrator to say, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that for you because I don't understand that field. Go figure it out. And that's what AI is there. You can solve a problem in 3 seconds with a clever prompt to a ChatGPT that would otherwise take you 2 weeks of brain pain trying to figure out. These things can be really good. Of course, you got to watch them and make sure the AIs that you're using have sufficient guardrails not to spew out slop. And there's a lot of slop out there, and we need to be able to recognize slop. On the other hand, these suckers are so smart, man. We do this all the time. If we have an application where we don't know if 2 categories of connectivity work together, just ask, and you get an answer. Verify the answer, you're off to the races. So AI is extremely important at the back end for amplifying our intelligence, our corporate intelligence, but it's also extremely important at the front end, which is where consumers touch it. And that's where it gets really interesting and also potentially very scary. So we've got companies like Google and Facebook, whose advertising model is not to be trusted. And then you've got other companies that dedicate themselves to, let's say, voice interaction, gesture interaction, anticipatory algorithms, predictive analytics, and things like this that can be trusted behind corporate firewalls. Those are the things we need to be smart about. But AI is something to embrace. There's no turning back. It's the most powerful invention in the history of the human species, and it's changing our evolution. So it's very, very significant. We must embrace it. I would suggest if you've got a company, let's say you're a typical integration company, you've got maybe 5, 6, 8 people on staff. One of those people should be your AI champion. It could be a young person. You could hire a 14-year-old or an 18-year-old, bring them in, and just say, I want you to learn everything about how AI can improve my company and the experience we give to our customers. And then it just floods in. And there's so much out there that you can find really compelling features that enhance your business. So I think any serious business should have at least one person who's dedicated to learning about how AI can improve that business.
I think there's a danger of ending up with too much choice, because AI, unless specifically told, is not a good curator. I think there's a lot of learning in terms of how we use AI. It's not just about asking it. It's about how we prompt it. It's about how we frame our conversations. So, an example would be, I would like to learn about lighting control from the point of view of a professional engineer. That's a simple prompt. You're giving it context, your level of understanding. It just like we would as an integrator to a client do fact finding about the client, how they use that kind of thing. As a user of AI, you need to think in that vein of, I'm a middle-aged couple exploring using home technology. What are the top 10 technologies I should be reading about? As a learning. Otherwise, you're going to go out into the big green fields and really just get lost in the forest. There is a lot of danger in that. Also, AI's output is either what speaks the loudest or an average of the results. So it's a computational thing, and I think AI can be trained. So it's time that integrators train their AI for a specific purpose. So, for instance, you might have an AI channel on ChatGPT and go, you are going to be my electrical specialist. Here are the things that I would like you to adhere to, and here are the things that I am offering. So you prompt that AI and give it a framework. Under these circumstances, I'm now going to ask you a question about X. And then you train another AI in terms of like, you are a lighting designer professional. Please create scenarios for me for living room spaces where blah.
That's training those.
Chris, you were going to say something.
Yeah, we call those personas. So we train the AIs as a persona, and it's certainly the way it's happening. I think the piece I'm taking away from all of this is that if you're an integrator today, AI is something that you're going to have to use or should be part of your toolbox. You need to get yourself trained on two things. You need to get yourself trained on prompt, so how to write a prompt properly, and then how to train yourself or get somebody to train you on what are the right tools to use for your business. And the third bit is you've also got to open your eyes and read what's coming back, because there is a lot of guff there. And I'm just waiting for somebody to understand how to spam AI, so that if I do a search for what is the best car I should buy,
stage in the development of AI, as Chris very rightly points out, and James,
to spam the algorithm.
You got to be very careful. There's a lot of slop coming out, and that's only it's a stage of immaturity, and we will become much more mature. I think that where things get interesting is when we have AI. We don't rely on a single source of AI like ChatGPT, that we use many, many AIs. And so that in the near future, we're going to have thousands, billions, perhaps trillions of little AIs. And we're going to have large ecosystems of AIs that cooperate with each other by virtue of agentic AI interfaces. And we're going to have spatial AIs that are very good at seeing, hearing, feeling, and interpreting what's going on in real reality. And so it's not a single thing. They're going to be pervasive. They're going to be all over the house. We're going to have we have AI on chip. We have AI on phone. We have AI on laptop. So they don't need to be reaching out to the cloud all the time, which means they don't necessarily need to be driven by an advertising model. So we're going to have a lot of little AIs. You can buy an AI-capable chip for 5 cents now, and that's cheap enough to put into a light switch or a thermostat. So we're going to have distributed AIs, little AIs all over the place that work with each other in a cohesive ecosystem using agentic interfaces that starts to make a whole lot of sense. So this is an awkward period. Yeah, you can always point out how AI does stupid things. Well, yeah, people do stupid things too. So it will get better, and then it'll get really better. And I think that's just over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I think that paying keen attention to the output and continuing to provide the feedback that improves the next round of input-output, I think that is key, which means you can't just take that answer and run with it, assuming that it's fact and scripture. No, we as humans still have to humanize that output in order to make sure that it's factual and appropriate for the intended use based on the need of the moment, right? So there's a lot in there, and much of that was just Katie's PSA and kind of moving this forward. We've been going here, guys, believe it or not, for about an hour 25, something like that. And while I could personally pour another cup and sit and listen to you guys for 2 more hours at least, let's wind this down, but there's a couple of things I'm going to tee you up for. I do want to have you do a quick recap, and I think the best way to do this with as heady a topic as this has been is just we'll go around the room again in intro order and just do a quick recap of the conversation from your point of view. So that would be Rich, Chris, then James. The other thing is I would like to make sure and introduce right now a PSA on behalf of the community in terms of where to get the education. Trade shows are a place to start reconsidering as a place to go to get education and the education that your team needs in order to be part of this industry and to be part of the progressive into the future of this industry. There is no better place to go to learn this stuff from this group that's here today and a ton of experts within our industry, ISE, Infocom, CEDIA Expo. Quit saying you're not going because there isn't anything new to see. Start saying you're going to go and you're taking your team because there is so much you need to learn and become experts in order for you to stay ahead of the wave, to differentiate your offering, and be the one that is the go-to resource in the future. That's my PSA, and I cannot tell you how passionate I am about this. You're probably hearing it. You start re-engaging with trade events from an educational perspective. You will be very surprised at what you will learn. Rich, I've met you before, but it's hearing you speak over and over and over at these trade shows that has really instilled in me the fact that you are not only an expert, but you're an expert that comes from our community that can be reached out to very quickly to get clarity on something that I don't understand. And that's not just for me because I'm Katie. That's just the guy that you are and the commitment you have to the industry, all of you here today. So I just wanted to take a quick moment and reach through to the audience and encourage you to start thinking about events a little bit differently because we got to get in front of this and we got to stay in front of it. Okay, so now back off my soapbox. Rich, Chris, then James, if you would, recap just from your POV where the conversation went today and maybe some pointers on what to do with that information. And we'll just move quickly through. Then we'll give you guys on the reader side, or on the listener side, we'll give you some contacts, and then we'll let you boogie. Okay? Here we go. Rich, you first.
Well, I think the most important thing to keep in mind, and maybe the takeaway that you can get from all of the bits and pieces that we've been flinging out on this podcast, is we need to think differently. We need to think exponentially. We need to think in pace with the way technology is affecting our lives in ways that are not at human scale. And so if I were to give advice, I would say stretch your brain into exponential thinking. Assume that there's a lot more to learn than you can possibly learn using traditional methods, so you have to use more advanced methods. Once you can start doing that, then stay focused on the human dimension of who we are, the human dimension of who we're serving. We are here to improve the lives of the customers we serve. And that's nothing more important than making their lives better with the proper implementation of integrated technology that we have busted our butts to learn about and get certified to deliver responsibly. So there's my takeaway.
Okay, so I'll build on what Rich just said because I agree with him about we've got to look at the exponential growth of where we're going to go. But the reality is, and I think Rich said it during the podcast, we should not be using our customers as the experiment. So we also have to look at what are we going to do today to deliver what we need to deliver for the next few years until all of this stuff starts to become so mainstream that it's going to be available as a system or a product that can be installed into somebody's home. And that's where you've got to start looking at how do you skill your business up. And, we touched just now on skilling up around AI. We're actually doing that here in our own team. We're employing somebody to advise us on the tools and how to use them of AI to allow us to be a better team. You're going to be looking at the new technologies that are coming through in terms of connectivity. You're going to be looking at certainly new display technologies that are going to come. AV over IP is going to start coming forward. You're going to have to start skilling there. And that's where your PSA there, Kate, is absolutely spot on. You need to look at the trade associations that we have in our industry and leverage the training that is in amongst them. And start being proud. If you're a CEDIA member, and you're CEDIA certified,
yeah, my takeaway,
start being
my
proud
advice
of it, start
for our
selling on that
listeners
basis, because it actually means
that
something.
you cannot do it alone.
It will mean something to your customer, but you have to tell them.
There is only so
the
much
case.
knowledge that any one person can have, unless your name is Rich Green, and you need to have community, and you need to have outreach, And one of the best ways to have outreach is, of course, come to CG Expo, come to Infocom, attend courses, talk to the people, of course. But in addition to that, I urge people to volunteer. Yes, sure, it's free and your time gets taken up, but the kind of people that you meet, if you're on a CEDIA standards call, do you actually know that you're working with people from Skywalker Ranch, from Dolby, from ISF, from all these industry heavyweights? And when you first join the call, sometimes you have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, because that's such a super level compared to where you are. But if you persist and you listen and you're patient, one day you find, oh, I actually said something. Oh, that person that I looked up to actually heard what I said and took it even further. And then you discover, oh, you're a contributor. You're part of the community. You learn. You continue to learn. You continue to know people that are the contributors in our community, and suddenly you go out and you have beers with them, you take photos with them, you go out and you hang out with them and you learn more. And that is the only way we can all help each other. And I think that is a very, very important part of participation.
Yeah, well said. Well said. All right, gentlemen. Well, let us take one more lap around the proverbial room. If people would like to find, follow, or engage with your brand or yourselves, how would they do that? Rich, we'll start with you again. Rich, then Chris, then James. In order there, for people to find, follow, and engage with your brand or you, how would they do so? Rich.
Well, I don't have a brand, and I don't use social media. You're not going to find me on LinkedIn. You're not going to find me on Facebook. I don't watch TV and I don't watch advertising. So there. If you want to communicate with me, go to CEDIA, go to ISE, stop me in the hallway, and I will buy you a beer and we will have a fabulous conversation.
So I do use social media. You will find me watching cat videos. Not true. But you will find me on LinkedIn under my name, Chris Hogg. I spell Chris with a K, clearly, which clearly is with a C. If you really want to find me, I will be around at ISE. You'll probably find me around the CEDIA booth area at some point in time as well. And like Rich, just find us. Let me buy you a beer. Let's just talk. Do you know the biggest thing that I've got out of this industry? And it's not the sitting in rooms doing volunteering for CEDIA, doing tech council and looking at the future of the integrator in 20 years. It's the friends I've made. And don't underestimate the power of those personal relationships that's built up with your fellow integrators, your fellow trade suppliers. You know, we're actually a really fun bunch of people. We do some really cool stuff.
And how do we find you,
we
Chris?
go off in a flight of fantasy
how do we find
sometimes.
You, Chris?
But actually, when it all comes down to it, it's just a great community. And I would
right.
really,
and it's
really
Chris
encourage
with
you
K
just to get engaged with us.
and Hogg with 2 G's. So just to get clarity here, it's KRISHOGG, George, Hogg. Yes. All right, good deal.
Chris Hogg on LinkedIn or in a corner watching cat videos.
Well, and cats, because now you've
Correct.
said that 3 times over, and you've just trained the models that Chris Hogg loves cat videos.
Yes.
Although,
good.
We'll send you
because now AI is watching my content.
So that's Chris with a K, Ink with a K,
watch content, classic
Katie with
cars,
a K, Chords
and
with a
AV.
K. And my name is James Chen, and you
cat
can find
videos.
me on james@kchords.com.
Sadly, I have a smart speaker in the corner. It probably knows now.
Of course, with a Z. I mean, the never on a podcast have there been so many nuances to names and brands and all the things, but that's what you get in AV, and that's indicative of the characters you'll find in the community, to Chris's point. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking an extensive amount of time out of your day. These conversations can be quite heady and very lengthy, but my goodness, what intelligence and insights have been shared here today. I said jokingly going into this that I hope hope you on the audience side were sit back, relax, and taking notes. If you're like me, you've got 2 pages of notes and a pen that's running out of ink and a sore hand. Rewind, listen again, and by all means, reach out to James, Chris, and Rich should you have questions and follow up after listening to this very engaging conversation. And again, look for all of them and me too at upcoming trade shows. We are all in this together, boys and girls, and everyone in between, and we do have a ton of fun doing it. So thank you again for joining us. I'm Katie McGregor Bennett, your host of AV Trade Talk and the Mastering Connectivity series sponsored by Chords. I will catch you on another episode. If there's a topic you would like to explore, hit me up in the sphere and let's have that conversation. I'm here to help you tell your story, share your story, and put a spotlight on what you do so well. Until then, take great care, and we'll catch you on another episode of AV Trade Talk. Thanks so much.